Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. I'm not. My internet is so slow that as I was uploading that video, congratulating all of you for your progress installing that exemption to the Colorado Right to Repair bill, they actually decided to put it to a vote, and they voted on it, 22-13. The anti-right to repair people won. There is now a giant gaping hole in the Colorado Right to Repair bill. It's for critical infrastructure, which sounds reasonable when you listen to how they try to explain it. But when you realize that they define critical infrastructure as allowing the manufacturer to define critical infrastructure, it no longer makes sense. If Naravid Framework in Colorado wanted to say that I've seen these laptops used in federal buildings, so this is considered critical infrastructure, he could now say, we're not selling you a battery, fuck right to repair, and be in complete legal compliance with this law as it's currently written. Because it's, in my opinion, a joke. In every state, I've seen right to repair get watered down. In New York, I saw these safety concerns where if there's a safety concern, they can sell you an assembly, which led to stuff like Samsung selling a $5 battery glued to a $220 screen as a $225 assembly to get around right to repair. In Minnesota, there's a carve-out that says game consoles are not included. When I was a kid, a game console was $100. I bought my PlayStation 1 at Toys R Us for $100 when I was 11 years old. I don't even want to think about what a PlayStation costs now. It's more than a damn laptop. And here you have an exemption for critical infrastructure where the manufacturer is allowed to define what is and is not critical infrastructure. Something tells me they're going to be deeming a lot more of their products critical infrastructure after this exemption passes. And the problem that I have with this, if you look at the wiki article that I made, is that Cisco and IBM spent about $600,000 to make it seem like there was more broad support for this exemption than there actually is. And when they went to vote on this 22-13 in favor of making this exemption, what you noticed during the discussion, they did not discuss the fact that the definition for critical infrastructure is horrible. They did not discuss the fact that the companies that are pushing for this, that spend all the money on this, are companies that actively brick their own hardware. If you try to flash newer, more secure firmware onto them after they're not supported anymore. They did not talk about any of the concerns that I brought up in that or any of the concerns the community had. You know what they brought up? You know what they spent about half of their fucking time discussing? Death threats. Unverified, unvetted death threats.
For some reasons that have nothing to do with inside this building, there are people on the internet who are very passionate about this and have, in fact, made death threats against folks involved with this bill. That's unbelievably inappropriate. I think, means the best thing to do today is to move forward here on second reading and work on a third reading amendment that I think tightens up the definition of what critical infrastructure is so that we are indeed addressing critical infrastructure and not just sort of like anything that anyone says is really important and we just don't want to be subject to this bill.
I do want to address that threats of violence, political violence in any form, are unacceptable inside or outside of this building. And if you are mad about a piece of legislation, send us an email, give us a phone call, but do not make death threats. That is completely 100% inappropriate, and that is not going to get you what you want. Civil discourse is the answer to what we need to be doing. But anyway, thank you to my colleagues for working on a better solution for this bill.
They spent a lot of their time talking about all the horrible, mean right to repair people that said all these mean things to them in emails and everything else. And I'm sitting here looking at this and thinking to myself, I've watched the news over the past couple of years. I've watched some of these 2 to 4 hour long congressional hearings they have when they're talking about things like tariffs, the war in Iran, ICE, gun control, immigration, and everything else. And you know what I don't hear brought up when they're talking about these highly contentious issues in a country of over 320 million people? All the death threats that they're getting from one side of the aisle. I don't hear that when I listen to these hearings. And they make the decisions that they make, and that's it. You know when I do hear death threats brought up? In a small state legislature, when they're talking about a group of nerds that showed up saying, here's why it would be really important to be able to fix networking equipment. So are you trying to tell me that there are more extremists in the state of Colorado that want to fix networking equipment than extremists that are involved in discussing gun control, the war in Iran, ICE, immigration, everything else we've been fighting over for the past 4 years in the United States of America? Or is this some sort of selective outrage that just so happens to come up when Cisco and IBM want to spend $600,000 purchasing a bill that the community doesn't like? Yeah, it's funny when you see this stuff brought up, isn't it? I'm a public figure. I see what is in my inbox and what's not in my inbox on a regular basis. I know a couple of politicians, and I know what they tell me is in their inbox on a regular basis. And I find it very interesting that this is when this comes up. You'll see something came up similar in 2020 and 2021 when we were talking about firmware versus source code for software. It was a video where I said, I don't think he knows the difference between firmware and source code for software. And he said that that the right to repair people were racist and tabled the bill. And I love how this type of stuff only comes up when we're talking about things that are actual consumer rights issues that consumers all support, and one or two companies that spend $600,000 lobbying against it are against. Does this add up to you? Does the math make sense that there are more people talking about death threats and how extreme and horrible they are when it comes to a state legislature talking about repair of networking equipment versus every other contentious issue in the United States of America where you never hear this brought up when they're making the decisions? I think there's some bullshit that needs cleanup in aisle 5. But let's go on with this. Let's just say for a moment that this actually does occur. What you're doing here is you're setting a precedent where if I want a law passed, we're just now legislating by reverse psychology. Let's say that I am a gun rights advocate and I don't want gun control. Let's say I live in New York. Let's say I said something like to my senator, you'd better fucking pass gun control. If you don't pass gun control, I know where you and your family live and I will kill them. Imagine if it was that easy. You just send a death threat from the opposite side, and now the senator's like, I don't like that those people are so mean, so yeah, we're gonna support the Second Amendment in New York. That's not how any of this works. That's not how any of this worked. If I could create 24 sock puppet Gmail accounts and just send really nasty emails to the senator pretending to be for the opposite side, and I could just get legislation passed, fuck, I would have had right to repair passed 10 years ago. But that's never how this works when it comes to the consumer rights side. That's how it works when it comes to the $600,000 spent by Cisco and IBM side. We don't legislate by reverse psychology in this country. That doesn't work. And if this is actually a thing that does work, wow, half of my comments in my YouTube section are fucking bots now, and you often see them being the top upvoted ones. How hard would it be? And if I was Cisco or IBM and I'm already spending $600,000 to get this bill pushed through, why not spend $250 in Fiverr for some people with a fucking Molvad VPN to take a couple of fake Gmail accounts and send a nasty email to a legislator pretending to care about consumer rights? This is a joke. And I hope you all see it as one. Lastly, if we're talking about critical infrastructure exemptions, let's actually take a look at something from CISA.gov. Let's actually take a look at some of how this works when it comes to maintaining critical infrastructure. If you go to page 26 of the PDF that I'm going to be looking at, it actually does say that in addition to the original vendor, that in-house staff, third-party providers, and a combination of all three should be able to have options to repair this equipment. So even if we are going to talk about how critical infrastructure should be maintained, CISA's own guidelines state that having more people be able to do the repair rather than less is important when it comes to maintaining critical infrastructure. If something is critical to our infrastructure, should it be more repairable or less repairable? What do you think is safer? A critical infrastructure exemption to the right to repair bill literally goes against the published CISA guidebook recommendations. This is all a dog and pony show and a joke put on by Cisco and IBM. They spent their $600,000 on it, and it worked. And the last thing that pissed me off above all else was listening to the co-sponsor of this, Senator Carson, and what he had to say.
And I want to note that when Governor Polis signed House Bill 241121, when he signed it into law, he issued a directive in his signing statement that the law should be fixed before its implementation date of January 1, 2026. He noted that Colorado is the only state in the nation that requires devices used for critical infrastructure to be included in their repair law. And so we're running this bill to fix a critical mistake made in the original law and protect our devices from malicious attacks.
He repeated his lie in the second hearing that he'd had in the first hearing about how Governor Jared Polis in his signing statement said that there should be some sort of carve-out or exemption for critical infrastructure in this bill.
And I will say, and I think it's important, that both the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office believe that we need to make this fix here in Senate Bill 90. They've been pretty clear about that. In fact, the Governor, when he signed the original right to repair bill back 2 years ago, in his signing statement, made it clear that he felt this type of revision would be important to the bill. So with that, I would urge the body to approve Senate Bill 90.
I looked up Governor Jared Polis' signing statement, and you know what I didn't find in it? Any request that there be an exemption or a carve-out for critical infrastructure for right to repair. But here's what I'm going to offer all of you. This is not going to be his Fulu Foundation, not going to be his Rossman Repair Group or any of my nonprofits. This is just coming from me, myself. And if you take a look at any of my past bounties, I always pay my debts. A $2,000 bounty, if anybody who voted for this in the Colorado State Senate can tell me where the citation is for the governor of Colorado saying that he wanted a carve out to this right to repair bill when he signed it. If you can provide me with a citation for that, I will write you a check for $2,000 and priority mail it to you. I saw the amount of money that people were taking from Cisco and IBM's lobbyists before signing this bill. I'm looking at the numbers, 250, 500, 250, 500, 1,800. Surely you can provide a citation for 2,000. Fuck, if I knew you guys were that cheap, I would have bought you myself. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. This bill has not passed yet because it still has to pass the House. And I'm hoping that the people in the House can look at this bullshit and see it for what it is.